A very good morning to all of you. Welcome back to the channel. So here we are starting with 23rd of July's analysis. So firstly, we see that as tensions rise in Manipur, so Meiteis, which is the majority community, they have been forced to leave the state. So here we see that the ethnic violence has been witnessed in the state of Manipur, but they've been forced to leave from the state of Mizoram. So exodus follows a diktat by a group of the former extremists to leave for own safety, and 56 Meiteis they have taken flight to Imphal. Many leave by buses and taxis. So basically, the obviously there is this concern and threat that things might even turn upside down in other neighboring states to Manipur as well. So you can find out about the New India Assurance Co Limited. It basically is celebrating 105 years of its foundation. So you can visit the actual and authentic website and search and read about it. So Delhi government is on high alert as Jamuna level. It is again likely to breach the danger mark. So right now we can just do is that tackle the situation and tackle the things at ground level, even when we're talking about the relief measures. So that is what can be the short-term steps. But in the long term, obviously, having a proper disaster management plan and then uh, identifying the main reasons behind this situation. Basically, there's so much of construction in the floodplains region which has led to this situation. So here we see that invasive weed, it threatens elephant habitats in Tamil Nadu. So how basically such invasive species, they can threaten the wildlife. This is an example of that. So an aquatic weed, which is native to some countries in Central and South America, including Peru, it is threatening the elephant habitats and foraging areas in Valparai in Tamil Nadu hill station close to Kerala boundary. So because of this, it might revive the risk of human animal or human elephant conflict in the region. So this is the weed or the invasive species, which is growing fast in number. So it grows along the water bodies and it has infested the majority of the hill station swamps, locally known as bayals, where elephants used to find lush grass even in the summers. So you can see in the picture, India Gate has been illuminated in a vibrant teal color on the occasion of World Fragile into um, Awareness Day. World Fragile X Awareness Day in New Delhi on Saturday. So Fragile X syndrome, it's a genetic condition that can cause learning disabilities and social language and emotional difficulties. So again, this becomes important. It is factual thing you can, but I have to read about it to have more clarity. Then such shameful news still coming up from Manipur that 18-year-old gang rape by armed men in Manipur. So FR says that the woman's group handed her over to four men wearing black shirts with clear instructions to kill her after facing brutal assault, torture, and a fall from a tree. So she managed to escape with the help of an auto rickshaw driver and could save her life. So here you need to basically think about what steps becomes important in order to deal or manage a mob, or when we use this keyword of mobocracy. So specifically the police, the armed forces which are deployed in the state in order to ensure the law and order situation in the state. So they need to be very clear with this idea, with these steps which are important to deal with the mob. So Ines Kirpan has been decommissioned from Indian Navy, handed over to Vietnam as a present. So calling upon the Vietnam People's Navy to closely examine and explore the vast potential that Indian shipbuilding industry holds, and stressing that it is the best value for money proposition they can find. So Navy's chief said that India's indigenous shipbuilding prowess is an assurance to our friends and partners that the Indian Navy is capable and ready to support the collective security needs in the region. So Russia accepts a para on the Ukraine war, and at the G20 meet, China it continues to oppose a joint document saying that geopolitical issues should not be included in the statements, and South Africa introduces new concerns. Then countries that differ on phasing out versus phasing down of the fossil fuels during green energy transition discussion, which is held in Goa. So these are some of the concerns, and obviously they become challenges for India being the president of G20 summit to bring all the countries on the same page and agree to a common joint statement or a common joint document. So China has its own concerns. South Africa has another set of concerns, and few countries they are basically debating over this term of phasing out versus phasing down of the fossil fuels. So when you talk about phasing out, so that requires uh, I would say, feasible and viable alternatives to fossil fuels. And if that's not available, so phasing out would be a very big challenge for the countries, specifically the developing countries. So whether they need to like go for phasing out or phasing down. So there's a debate over this issue as well. So Telemanas helpline is run by the government has fielded 2 lakh distress calls. So a general feeling of sadness, sleep disturbance, stress and anxiety top the list of mental health concerns that prompted Indians to call the government-run National Telemental Health Line, which is called Telemanas, and it's a digital arm of the district mental health program. So when we talk about this program, again, you can search and find out about the basic features, the objectives of it, and the service which is aimed at strengthening the mental health service delivery in the country. So it reached a milestone of having received over 2 lakh calls from various parts of the nation. So there are counselors sitting on the other side who can help you in terms with dealing any kind of mental stress or a problem. So we see that so far out of these 2 lakh calls, 59% were male callers and 40% were female callers. So then accordingly, obviously, the solutions are also going to vary. Then heavy burst of rain turns the Junagadh streets into rivers. Cars and cattle have been swept away. So you're seeing that in different parts of India. You're seeing somewhere we're facing drought, somewhere we're seeing flooding, flash floods in the hilly states. So situation, it's obviously we'll be seeing these regional variations, and these are the impacts of climate change. So captive bred vultures, they take wing in the forest expanses. So in 2028, critically endangered oriental white-backed captive bred vultures, they were released into the wild for the first time in India from the Jatayu Conservation Breeding Center in Pinjore, Haryana. Close to 3 years later, we see that only five have survived and two have paired and successfully nested in the untamed habitat of Shiv-like range in the foothills of Himalayas. So they have been under the threat of extinction since 1990s. So you can find out about the species of vulture found in India, the wildlife habitats, specifically for their conservation, where are they located in India. So all of that is very important. So in a show of strength, China sends dozens of warplanes to Taiwan. So we know that tensions are growing up in this region in the Taiwan Strait because again, USA wants to ensure its presence, or it wants to intervene or have some role in terms of supporting Taiwan. But obviously, China would not like something like this. So it has sent dozens of warplanes to Taiwan. So we can expect next conflict or war-like situation in the Taiwan Strait. And then on the other side, you can see North Korea, it also fires several cruise missiles into the Yellow Sea. Now, you need to know about the exact location of Yellow Sea, which all countries they border Yellow Sea. That is also important. And then the cruise missiles. What are the unique features of a cruise missile? And you can compare them with the ballistic missiles. So ISA member nations, they aim to ink deep sea mining rules by 2025. So what, according to you, needs to be the rules when we talk about deep sea mining? So international seabed authorities, member nations, they've agreed on a 2-year roadmap for the adoption of deep sea mining regulations. And again, you need to also know about the basics, the factual things about the International Seabed Authority. So reservists, they threatened to quit over the Israel judicial revamp, and at least 1,100 Air Force reservists, they declare intention to suspend the volunteer service if Parliament passes this bill next week, and they call for Benjamin Netanyahu's government to arrive at broad consensus. So this has been a topic of debate and seeing protests, violence because of these proposed judicial reforms in Israel. And so basically, the reforms, they are aiming at limiting the judiciary's powers, which the protesters they view as a threat to democracy. So it is being believed that China is helping Russia with military equipment in the Ukraine war. So we have a statement from the French President Emmanuel Macron's diplomatic advisor said China was delivering items to Russia that could be used as a military equipment that in turn could be used in its war in Ukraine. So there are indicators that they are doing things we would prefer them not to do. So far we see China does not come out open what is its clear stance about this war, and that is being believed that in a overt and covert manner, basically in covert manner, secretive manner, China is supporting Russia. So in artificial intelligence, unlimited potential. the benefits and the risks. So what are the benefits and what can be the risks? So when artificial intelligence radically transforms the workplaces and institutions, how can productivity be evaluated and excellence of individuals and institutions be measured? So because it impacts all these areas, so when we talk about productivity, that is one of the benefits. It increases the productivity, but at the same time, when we talk about the accuracy of the data that we get, because of late we saw few articles which were talking about its poor performance when it comes to maths or whatever, like searching on chat gpt, the quality is falling. So obviously we can't compromise with the quality under the garb of enhanced productivity and efficiency. So it has, many believe that it's a game changer. So while AI, it will help in democratizing the knowledge, cutting edge science and applications are unlikely to develop in the resource limited settings. So the protein folding problem may be over with the achievement of the deep mind's AlphaFold in accurately predicting the structure of proteins. Then drug discovery, especially for the rare diseases, that has also become faster due to AlphaFold. And in 2020, a robotic synthesizer, it read a research paper and made the compound described in it. And then UNEP's World Environment Situation Room user AI to analyze real-time sensor data from sensors in over 140 countries to predict glacier mass and sea level rise. So here also in terms of basically data interpretation, or you can say in calculation, so it is saving a lot of time. So herein we are seeing it is improving the efficiency of working. And here we are like several examples are being mentioned that where all it is being actually used. So again, we have this article upon will G20 agree on a joint communique or not? So we just saw what are the challenges to this joint document. Countries have their own concerns, and here we have in proper detail why are Russia and China they are opposing and what are the chances. So we'll not go into this. Why has the current presidency continued with the Bali paragraphs in its document? So Indian officials they maintain that a lot of hard work went into the formulation of the Bali paragraphs, and therefore they have been important into India's G20 documents as well. They say that Bali formulation can be divided into three parts: the reference to the UN Security Council, UNGA resolutions deploring Russia's war in Ukraine, which are from the UN and cannot be modified. And secondly, statement that most numbers strongly condemned the war in Ukraine refers to International Monetary Fund's conventions for qualifiers, where most means 62% or 12 of the 20 G20 members. Then the use of the Prime Minister Modi's phrase that this era is not of war, that is universal and it does not refer to any one country or any one war in particular. So even India's Sherpa Amitabh Kant has also made it clear that developing countries did not create the Ukraine conflict, nor is the war India's priority at the G20. So instead, India wants to leave the intractable issues for the end, keeping the focus on the induction of African Union. That is one of, we can say, the focus areas or the topics of debate and discussion. And then development goals, digital public infrastructure, gender-led empowerment. When we talk about women-led development, reform of multilateral development banks, and again, we talk about the debt management of the developed world. So these are the concerns for India at the current summit. So recently we saw that a new data panel has been constituted. So can it really improve the India statistics or not? So how did the new Standing Committee on Statistics it came about and what is its official mandate? So it has the task of Basically, it is a task of interpreting the data from NSO. So, under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, is formed a new standing committee on statistics to advise on the official data that is generated by NSO. This panel, chaired by the former the NSA Commission Chief and India's first Chief Statistician, Pranab Sen, they will replace another committee headed by him that was formed in 2019. So, what is different about this new committee? So, the Standing Committee on Economic Statistics, it was mandated to review the framework for economic indicators like those pertaining to industrial and service sectors, along with labor force statistics. This made its focus, it was limited to reviewing the high frequency data like the IIP, CPI, apart from different surveys and enumerations. Now, the recent committee that has been formed, it has enhanced the terms of reference of the committee. So their ambit has been widened that enable it to advise ministry and not just on all the existing surveys and data sets, but also it has the responsibility or the task to identify areas where the data gaps exist and suggest ways to fill them, carry out pilot surveys and studies to fine tune the new approaches for capturing better data. So in this committee, we are also having more number of experts. So traditionally, NSO used to appoint committees to advise on the design and methodology for the surveys. However, this panel, it has a wider mandate as it can also proactively work on issues beyond the surveys. Obviously, why does it matter? So when it comes to data interpretation, so that is the core of taking further policy decisions. So So what has to be done to get to zero hunger? What steps are required? What does the data says? So why is the level of undernourishment still high? What is the extent of the cost increase for a healthy diet? Where is food insecurity being felt more? In which parts of the world? What are some of the suggestions which are offered by the Global Report on Food Crisis? So this report projects that almost 600 million people will be undernourished in 2030. So while the two pandemic years it did not record a growth in the food insecurity, data for 2022 shows the levels far higher than the pre-pandemic 2019 year. So what is actually food security? The basic idea behind it. The food security, it is defined from the World Food Summit of 1996 that when all the people at all the times they have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. So this is how you define food security. So what are the key findings of this report? So the global report, it starts with a qualified assertion that hunger is no longer an alarming path upwards at the global level, but still far above the pre-COVID pandemic levels, and that the world is far off track towards achieving this SDG goal number 2 of zero hunger. So there's a lot of gap that exists, and then obviously the question comes up, what needs to be done? So it sets the global context preceding and during the year under assessment, particularly paying attention to the increasing phenomenon of urbanization. That is one of the reasons, indirectly, if not directly, and obviously it affects the food security. So from 2022, according to this report, it says that no progress was made on food insecurity at the global level. So following a sharp increase from 2019 to 20, the global prevalence of moderate or severe food insecurity remained unchanged for the second year in a row. So situation is neither basically worsening nor it's improving. It's almost at the same level. So some good news, or we can say the good observations, is that stunting, which is another key metric, it is defined as a condition of being too short for one's age. Among the children under 5 years of age, it has declined steadily from 204 million in 2000 to 148 million in 2022. So the number has decreased steadily. Simultaneously, when we talk about child wasting, which is caused by insufficient nutrient intake or absorption, that is also declined. And in terms of children who are overweight or who are obese, the study indicated a non-significant increase from 5.3 to 5.6%. So what are the key drivers of food insecurity? So according to the report, the following reasons they're being responsible. So one is slowing down, which is thanks to the lockdowns, economic downturns, and other pandemic-related disruptions that led to job losses and reduced the incomes for many people. Then we have this Ukraine war, the governmental policies that may not be entirely favorable, and then increasing urbanization that drives changes through the agri-food systems. So whenever you are like analyzing or going through any article, it's important to, underline or you can highlight the keywords. And then the report's comparison of food insecurity among the rural, peri-urban, and urban population reveals that global food insecurity is lower in urban areas. So that is quite shocking that food insecurity is lower in urban areas. And when we talk about the rural areas, obviously they are, as we say, they produce the food grains, and despite that they face the situation of high food insecurity compared to the people residing in urban areas. So what are the possible solutions ahead? So report identifies and it helps identifying the vulnerable population groups, contributing to evidence to inform their decision making and effective action through appropriate targeting and design of the policies and programs. So obviously, firstly, you will be identifying what is or in which regions the vulnerable population resides, and then accordingly what steps needs to be taken. So basically central government policy can play an important role, support from the civil society and private sector. In terms of CSR funds, they can be leveraged over here. So some of the recommendations include supporting healthier food outlets as key for enabling access to healthy diets. Policy incentives can be provided to encourage these shops to sell greater amounts of fresh and minimally processed foods. And then another key input is on the street food. So with which an estimated 2.5 billion people the worldwide consume every single day thanks to the convenience and the cost factor. So report calls for addressing multiple infrastructure and regulatory gaps to improve the nutritional safety and quality of street food. So we need to work upon building the rural infrastructure, including quality, rural and feeder roads to connect the remote farms and enterprises to main road networks. So the role of local governments becomes fundamental in this whole exercise. So the thing is that we need to adopt a bottom-up approach. So in the beginning, we can see that Sri Lanka may adopt Indian rupee for the local transactions. So this is a hot topic of debate and discussion when talking about internationalization of rupee or de-dollarization. What are the benefits of it, and then what are the concerns related to it? And apart from this, India's engagement with different countries, specifically in the context of trade payments. So that is growing. And then again, what are the comparative other currencies which are in the fight for de-dollarization? So farmers, they may stop sowing of cotton as yields and the prices they slump in Tamil Nadu. So firstly, you need to know about what climatic conditions are required for cultivation of cotton, and then you can go for the states or top three or top four states which produces maximum amount of cotton. So area under the cotton cultivation in Tamil Nadu is likely to fall the next sowing season. Farmers, they are harvesting cotton now, they are struggling to get remunerative prices. So because of this reason, the farmer, they might shift to other alternatives, not go ahead with cotton cultivation. Coming to Financial Express newspapers, so we see even in terms of monsoon this year, we're seeing huge regional variations. So bountiful rains in northwest and central India, and still we see that East India and South India, they still lag behind. So that can be one of the reasons also why we are seeing flood-like situation in UT of Delhi, or even in the hilly states, we're seeing instances of flash floods. So obviously the plan of action needs to be different for the states where we're seeing heavy rainfall, and it needs to be different for the states where we see uh, less intensive rainfalls, because there we can expect drought-like situations. So again, how the role of government becomes important there in terms of disaster management is important. So here we're talking about the growing role of technology, specifically talk about in the context of artificial intelligence, growing role or dependence upon AI in the healthcare sector. So from Dr. Google to Dr. ChatGPT. So ChatGPT and other AI chatbots, they are increasingly being used for seeking medical advice, and not only by the patients and the public, but even by medical professionals as well. So this is quite alarming. And AI and robotics in healthcare. So that helps in early detection, in keeping well, in the treatment, diagnosis, and decision making. So here are the different roles where AI and technology, they can help also, and they also become a cause of concern. So you can just go through these explanations in short. So this is talking about the basic science that how the pH of the body matters. So what is acidosis and how to deal with it? So when we talk about metabolic acidosis, so this type of acidosis occurs when there is an excess production of acid or decrease in the elimination of acid from the body. So some causes of metabolic acidosis includes the diabetic ketoacidosis, so it's uncontrolled diabetes that can be responsible for it. Kidney disease can be responsible, and lactic acidosis. So this occurs when there is an accumulation of lactic acid in the body, often seen in conditions like infections or liver disease or certain medications. Then respiratory acidosis is also a variety or a type of it. So this type of acidosis occurs when there is an impaired exchange of carbon dioxide in the lungs, leading to accumulation of CO2 in the bloodstream. So this can be because of the lung disease, impaired breathing. So what are reliable indicators of acidosis? So we can measure, or we can go for diagnosis of the blood pH. Can go for this test. Blood gas analysis can be done. Biocarbonate levels can be checked. Carbon dioxide levels in the body, that can also be checked. Then an iron gap. symptoms and clinical signs, or some of the indicators through which we can basically come to know whether a person is suffering from acidosis or not. Then if you have like if you've been diagnosed with acidosis, so how basically you need to, your food habits needs to be in accordance with this disease or with this condition so as to treat it naturally. So you need to basically prefer alkaline foods. So the concept of consuming alkaline foods, it is based on the belief that certain foods, they can influence the pH level of the body and promote more alkaline, that is basic environment. So theory suggests that maintaining an alkaline state in the body can have health benefits and prevent various diseases. So it's important to know that human body, it has sophisticated mechanisms to regulate the pH level and keep them within a narrow range, regardless of the foods we are consuming. So here are the few reasons why consuming a balanced diet is generally advised, even if you're not suffering from acidosis, but still it would be preferred that you go ahead with alkaline foods. So nutritional balance. So following a balanced diet includes variety of foods, including both acidic and alkaline foods. And then going for healthful choices like alkaline promoting foods. There are fruits, you can go for fruits consumption, vegetables, whole grain, plant-based proteins, which are generally considered healthy food choices. Then acid-base balance needs to be maintained. So we see maintaining a stable blood pH. Usually the range is between 7.35 and 7.45. So deviations from this range, it can have serious health consequences. The word serious has been used. Then we talk about the kidney function. So consuming excessive alkaline foods or supplements, they can potentially burden the kidneys and affect their normal function also. So even you don't have to go for excessive consumption as well. So you need to maintain a balance. So should we avoid the acidic foods totally in case of acidosis or not? So if you are suffering from acidosis, so it is not necessary to completely avoid all the acidic foods even then. However, it's important to understand that development of acidosis, it's usually due to underlying medical conditions or the physiological imbalances, or rather than solely caused by consumption of acidic foods. So that is not the case that if you are only consuming acidic foods or you are like dependent more upon the consumption of acidic foods, only then you will be, diagnosed with acidosis. It can be because of other medical conditions as well. So you don't have to, completely avoid the consumption of acidic foods. But again, you need to focus upon more healthy options. So do we want India's economy to grow at over 7.5% so that we may become a middle income country? Or do we want a trudge along at 5 to 6% and boast that India is the fastest growing large economy in the world? So these are the two options available, and the later is equivalent of being the one-eyed monarch of the blind. So to grow at 7.5% or not, here we see what improvements do we require in which all areas, and then what steps needs to be taken accordingly. So we need to focus firstly upon the labor participation rate, and we need to tackle the high unemployment rate. So in improving this low labor participation rates of working age population that is between 15 years and above, India is estimated at about 61% of the total population, and then it will decline after 2036. So we have this window of opportunity and we need to leverage it. So celebrated as demographic dividend, it has a short life. So bugbear in the labor participation rate. So basically, we need to, work here and try to ensure that it increases. So in June 2023, it fell below 40% against China's labor force participation rate at 67%. So we're basically comparing it with the situation in China. So when we talk about the female LPR rate particularly, so it is worse at 32%. So here we have the potential to increase it. So why are 60% of the working age population and 67% of the women, they're not working or they're not looking for any employment? So now we can apply the unemployment rate of 8.5% to the LPR. So here you can get an idea of the enormity of unutilized human resources and the potential that exists in India. So increase in life expectancy, that is a positive progress, and the spread of education, they are of no use if full 60% is not available or it is willing to work. So Indian economy is running on two of the four wheels only right now. Then working upon the quality of education. So according to the annual status of education report, it's a nationwide household survey. It captures, among other things, the learning outcomes of children in rural India. So according to the 2022 report, it reached almost all the rural districts. So here we have the data. So there are like also huge variations among the states as well. So average years of schooling in India is 7 to 8 years. So if these are the learning outcomes of our children in numeracy and literacy, so here you can go that children who can read standard two textbook in terms of the percentage. So the children who are in third standard, only 20% of them can read the textbook of second standard. Then basic arithmetic level, we can see that's not, posing a good picture. And read English words. So even here, we need to improve. So we need to focus upon the quality of education. Then there is low productivity in agriculture. Again, we have a lot of potential of improvement even in the agricultural sector. And this has been one of the concerns specifically in the context of the performance of India's agricultural sector when we talk about the low productivity levels or the low yield which we have. So India has become an exporter of rice and wheat. It may have induced complacency. So going forward, climate change, migration to cities, urbanization, water availability, rising input cost will mean that if farming must remain a worthwhile and profitable activity, productivity per hectare that needs to increase. And then talking about inflation and interest rates, so even that needs to be moderated and controlled within the safer zone. So Indian industry is competing to survive amidst the high inflation we see and the high interest rates and high tariff levels. So all of them must be tackled vigorously and that needs to be lowered. So these are for the areas where we can work and ensure that India grows at 7.5% or beyond. Coming to Indian Express newspaper, so have we talked about this? Metis, they begin to leave the state of Mizoram after threat, and Manipur government says that it is willing to provide flights to them. And then the CM of Jharkhand says, can't let our tribal brothers, sisters be treated this way. So all the sarpanches or the vibrant villages near the China border going to attend the Independence Day event. So the Independence Day Red Fort will see some special guests, the sarpanch of about 662 villages on the China border in these various states, which are covered under the Vibrant Villages program. So here we have this map of Mizoram and Manipur as well. So you can see you need to be clear with which all states are bordering the other states, specifically the map of northeastern India. So the idea of mini forests, so whether they'll be like sustainable or not is one question. So four mini forests to come up at Dwarka Expressway. So planning to adopt the Miyawaki afforestation technique. The National Highways Authority of India has announced that four small forests will be developed to improve the greenery on the cloverleaf located in NH 48 interchange of Dwarka Expressway. So under the Miyawaki method, it is a technique for the cultivating of fast-growing groves of native plants with the dense mixed planting intended to stimulate layers of a natural forest. So in Bihar, Industrial Investment Promotion for Textile and Leather Policy 2022. So here some of the potential benefits out of this. So you can just go through them. So Prime Minister says that phone banking scam by previous government broke the nation's banking system. So what are all the components that comprises of India's banking system? We need to be clear with that. And phone banking scams by the previous government, they broke the banking system in the country. And then during the previous government, phone banking meant something different with a different intention. So those days, powerful leaders, they close to a special family, would call the banks to get loans worth thousands of crores sanctioned for their favored ones. And those loans, they were never repaid also. So they would call the banks to give out a second loan to repay the third loan and so on. And this phone banking. So here basically this is being used in different contexts. Like you call the bank. So that's why the phone banking. So it was one of the biggest scams of the previous government. So you can right now you can just think about the positive things about the nation's banking system and how internet banking that has helped the digital services is helping in improving good governance. And you can also then think about few concerns as well. So CGI says that science and technology should combat threats to people's freedom. So, speaking at the convocation ceremony of IIT Madras, he said, our history illustrates a dialectical relationship between law and technological development. Ask yourself, what are the values that your technology represents? By value, I do not refer to the monetary worth, but the fundamental principles that your technology stands for. During the pandemic, he said Supreme Court introduced virtual hearings across India, and he said that this has particularly helped female lawyers who would face difficulties appearing in person due to their responsibilities at home. So it even helped them, and IT, it has also helped ordinary people access the information and proceedings with ease. Then talking about artificial intelligence, he said it is rapidly being deployed to enhance efficiency. So even at the Supreme Court, it is being tested for live transcription of the court proceedings. So the challenge is to identify how we can reap the benefits of this technology while curbing its potential for harm. So a significant number of people in India cannot effectively exercise their freedom because they lack access to necessary resources and public goods. So technology, it should play a role in expanding the range of opportunities for them. So this article we have already taken up from the Financial Express. So it's exactly the same article. So yesterday we talked about the transnational power grid project. It gets a high voltage boost. So what is it all about? So India has got encouraging response from the neighboring countries to its proposal to jointly build a transnational electricity grid to enhance the regional energy security. So we are promoting this mutually beneficial cooperation with all the neighbors in the region. So it is basically for trading of power with the ASEAN countries through BIMSTEC, and that envisages a grid connection from India and Bangladesh through to Myanmar and Thailand. So we already export some electricity to Nepal and Bangladesh and import hydropower from Bhutan. So these are already working. So going beyond the goal of ensuring energy security, the move is also strategic in nature. So given that New Delhi is hoping to push the grid interconnection proposal as an effective counter to China's growing diplomatic influence in South Asia and West Asia. So here also, like strategically also, it is very important. And the grid connectivity plan, it would ensure better capacity utilization of energy infrastructure by the complementing member countries' demand and supply situation. And obviously, from the perspective of economics, also, it would be really helpful and rewarding. So, while the energy deficit countries like Bangladesh, Myanmar, they would be keen to come on board, energy surplus countries are sometimes less invested in the idea of joining a transnational grid arrangement. So, that would be a challenge. So India's coal production grows 8.55%. So import prices for the coal have plummeted by over 60% in the first quarter. So Coal Ministry said that India's achievements in coal production reflects the concerted efforts of the coal industry and its commitment to meeting the growing energy needs of the nation. So this is an expectation that going forward, even the energy being generated from the thermal power stations would be going up. So this is at a time when we also talk about the green energy transition, but obviously things are not going to change suddenly. It is going to take some time. So for the time being, we expect the dependence upon the fossil fuels to go up in future. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us in the session. I hope the topics that we took up are clear and they bring more clarity to you in terms of having more ideas and increases your mind processing speed. So thank you for joining, and do subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and hit the like button for the video. Thank you.